joining us is Rabbi Dr. Moshe Ratt. As I said, I actually introduced you, uh, Rabbi. So if you'd like to say a few words about yourself as well, you're more than welcome. Before we get into kind of the things you do and the things you write, which are fascinating in my opinion. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So as I said, I've already introduced you to the crowd because I thought you were with us. If you'd like to introduce yourself and say a couple of things generally about things you do, that would be more than, we'll all enjoy that
Uh,
as well.
I think I leave it to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I hope I was gracious enough in my introduction. Uh, Rabbi Dr. Moshe Ratt wrote about 3 years ago a book titled Pashut Leha'amin, Simply Believe, or It is Simple to Believe. It can be translated both ways. And one of your main claims as a rabbi and a philosopher is that believing in God makes more sense than not believing in God. Now,
Hmm.
this claim sometimes is perceived as surprising, as we tend to associate believing with something that is not substantiated, something that is not rational, not reasonable. So we call it, oh, I believe something that I cannot prove or is not rational enough. But your claim is that it is more rational or more reasonable to believe. Would you kind of elaborate on this view?
Yes. First of all, we should make clear what do we mean by saying believe. As you said, many people think that belief is something irrational. There are things we know, there is knowledge, and there are beliefs. But in truth, if we check all our knowledge, we'll find that it is actually all based on beliefs. There isn't anything that can be proved unconditionally beyond any doubt. And therefore, everything we claim we know, we actually believe. Every beginner student in philosophy who learns Descartes and David Hume and other skeptical philosophers knows very well that there is nothing we can claim to know beyond doubt. Everything we know, we can ask ourselves, how do we know it? Is it really can be proved? And so on. So if we will check everything we think we know, we'll find, as I said, it is actually based on beliefs, and therefore there isn't anyone who doesn't believe. The only question is, what do we believe? In English, there is a difference between faith and belief. Faith is something related to a religion and similar beliefs, and it is considered to be based on nothing but some kind of feeling. And I have a faith. Why do I have a faith? I do have a faith. I don't have to explain it. And believe is a more general term. I believe it will rain tomorrow. I believe someone will be a better president than the other. We all believe all kind of things. But in Hebrew, there isn't any difference between faith and belief. We call both of them lehamin, emunah. So it is more
By the
clear.
way, if we're
Mhm.
already talking about that, being that I am a Hebrew teacher, Amen, which is Amen, and Emunah all go back to the same root, Aleph, Mem, and Nun, that has to do with something that is literally well supported, like the supporting beams in the temple were called Omenot. Like,
Mhm.
so that's literally something that is well founded, well substantiated in relation to what you've been saying.
Mhm. Okay. So as I said, everything we know it's actually based on beliefs, even science, even logic. Everything you check, you'll find that in its foundations there are axioms, there are all kind of suppositions that can't be proved beyond doubt, and therefore we are all believers. But it doesn't say that we should believe everything. Yes, it is the opposite claim that saying that okay, if everything is believed, as everything, then everything goes. it is not what I said. What we should do is to strive to rational beliefs, to make our belief based on arguments, on evidence, on intuitions, and so on. And when we go on this way, I think it is quite clear that the belief in God is actually more rational, more founded than the disbelief in God.
Okay. And so, along the lines of the previous question,
Mhm.
what are the main flaws and fallacies that you find in atheism, or maybe even agnosticism, or maybe
Mhm.
even furthermore this type of very thin theology that I know you have criticized? You know, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty and different figures in contemporary religious Israeli philosophers, but like also people who have suggested very thin theology or agnosticism, and um, definitely atheism. What do you see as their main flaws and fallacies in their approach to the theistic question?
Okay, we'll start with atheism. First of all, atheism in its hardcore is claiming something that it has no reason to claim. How can anybody say that there is no God? How do you know it? Let's take example from other area. Yes, nobody claims for sure that there are no aliens in the universe. Yes, every rational man will say either there are, either there aren't. I can't know for sure, but I can't claim that there are no aliens, no other life forms in the universe. The universe is so large, so vast, we can't know. So if we don't know, our default choice should be to say, I don't know. If an atheist says, I know that there is no God and I'm sure of it, he says something that he has no reason to say. Um,
Which leads me to the agnostic view, which is
okay,
I don't know.
that's right. And then the next stage is really the agnostics. Actually, most
Maybe
of
we should
the
say that agnostic, for those of us who are not familiar with the term, means
Mhm.
literally I don't know. The I
Yeah.
don't know view. Maybe there is God and maybe there is not God, and that's
Mhm.
agnosticism. Okay.
Yes, actually, most people who call themselves atheists today are actually agnostics. If you push them to the corner, they say, okay, I don't know if there is a God or not, but unless I find some evidence, I suppose he doesn't exist, like I suppose about fairies or unicorns or all kind of things that maybe they exist, but I suppose they don't unless proved otherwise. What is the problem with this view? First of all, if there are enough evidence to support the belief that there is God, so being agnostic is not rational, and I think that there are enough evidence to justify the belief in God. But even if you don't accept those evidence, it's still you can't just say, okay, I'm agnostic, because the question if there is God or not, it has ramifications on our way of life. Yes, we should make choices about it. It's like that. Let's imagine that there is now a new vaccine for corona. Some professors say it is really working, it's very good, everyone should take it. Other professors say, no, it's very dangerous, it can make damage, don't take it. Now, when I ask myself what is the truth, then in my mind, I have three options. I can believe that the vaccine helps, I can believe that it is bad, and I can say, I don't know, I am agnostic. But when it is coming to my actual choice, I have only two choices. Either I take the vaccine or I don't. There isn't a third option. So
Oh, but
also, mhm,
if I may, for instance, I'll just mention one name in that regard.
mhm,
The Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson, one of the vocal speakers, one of the loud voices of the conservative community worldwide. He speaks about acting. as if there is a God without getting into the philosophical questions. So is
Mhm.
that the type of kind of two options that you mean? Because then he is still agnostic in a sense, but
Mhm.
behaves as if there is a God.
I think that many believers are actually agnostics of this type. They say, I don't know for sure, I can't prove that there is a God, but I believe there is, uh, because some reasons or others. And therefore I behave as if there is actually a God. And it is also a legitimate kind of way of life, I think. It's not maybe the best. Again, I prefer people will
It's a little bit like Pascal's wager, like bet.
not necessarily because
Not necessarily, but I'm saying if you kind of saying I'm not certain, but certain things that are not related directly to the philosophical question lead
mhm,
me to decide I behave as if according to that concept there is a God.
mhm,
Then in that respect they are similar. I'm not saying that the reasons are similar. It might be that I was born
mhm.
into it. I like it. I like the going every Sunday
Okay.
or every Shabbat or every Friday for that matter to my house of
Um,
worship and so forth.
I prefer to compare it, say, to morality. Yes, we all have some sense of morality, some values, some ideals we act upon, even if they take from us a heavy price. And we know that morality is not something that can be proved to be true very easily. Yes, morality is actually even more difficult to prove than the existence of God. And still, many people, even atheists, do act and behave as if there is an objective morality. They argue about it, they fight about it, they give their money, even their life sometimes because of this morality. It's very important for them, even though they know they can't prove it for sure, because they feel in their heart, in their soul, in their intuitions that this is the right thing to do. The belief in God can also be of this kind. Yes, somebody might say, I can't prove that there is God. I don't know all those philosophical arguments, but I do feel in all my heart, in my intuitions, in my common sense that there is a God. I believe it, I sense it, and therefore I live according to this belief, even if I can't prove it logically or in any other way.
Okay, which leads me, you touched it a little bit. How about the sin theology? What do you make of it? Because
The what?
yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said that lately, not just lately, but I think the more rationalistic uh, tendencies in some of the medieval Jewish philosophers and even modern contemporary philosophers have suggested a very thin theology. That is to
Mm-hmm,
say, God exists. God has the ability to do uh, something that is out of the ordinary, something that is supernatural. But
mm-hmm,
unless I have a kind of a clear cut evidence that would hold to a scientific kind of scrutiny, I assume that
mm-hmm,
this is I assume that it is not that as long as I don't have to. We had for instance last week we've talked about Biliam and the donkey or Adam or even the serpent, all of these,
mm-hmm.
yeah, and you know that some of the medieval Jewish commentators spoke about this not being an actual uh, dialogue between an animal and a person, but rather kind of a
A dream.
soliloquy or kind of internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And along these lines, what do you think about sin theology?
I don't think it's a good idea because when you are going to making such a diet of theology, you end up with atheism in the end. Because if you doubt any tale about miracles and you say it doesn't make sense to me and I don't think it's rational and so on, so where will it stop? So eventually you will reach the conclusion that even the base elements of the religion are not scientifically based. Who knows if there actually was an exodus and the revelation in Mount Sinai and so on. And it's not surprising that many students of Maimonides and similar medieval scholars who walked in this path did actually become quite atheistic and heretical. And we also can see it in our days because when your mental movement, your psychological movement is of shrinking the presence of God to the minimal, so you will end up without any of it. I think that the movement should be to expand our circle of religion to include many kind of things, even if we can't prove their existence, as long as they don't contradict our knowledge. We can believe in angels and in heaven, in hell, and miracles, even if we can't prove them scientifically, because science doesn't disprove them either. We can say that they are part of our worldview, that there are many things that we can't see but still exist, and so on. And so I think that the movement should be, as Gilbert Keith Chesterton said, to expand our circle, not to shrink it, and try to include many things, many kind of faiths, even if they are not scientifically proved.
Okay, so along this like continuum, this spectrum of very, very thin theology on the one hand side, and kind of and forgive me for not remembering all of my medieval philosophy classes that I took somewhere in the past, but there was maybe Mu'tazil, maybe Mu'azatil or whatever. There was maybe Kalam. I can't remember, not the Kalam. The Kalam were close to Maimonides or the other way around. There was kind of a Muslim philosophical school that talked about each and every element in creation having kind of an angel that tells it what to do to such a specificity that would seem to be, kind of too much. So where do you draw a line? Where do you kind of put what would be the equilibrium? What would be the place where you want to say, oh, this is too thin and this is too fat, so to speak, like yours truly?
Yes.
What is your perfect BMI, religious BMI?
Yes, there aren't any rules for it. It's a matter of intuition and personal choice. But I think we can find the balance between too thin and too wide theology. As I said, things that contradict our knowledge and contradict science should not be taken into our worldview, but only if they
So is it
actually.
kind of a God between the gap kind of
No,
a
no,
claim?
no.
Why not?
Because we should be aware that science actually knows very little on reality, much less than what we think it says. Because let's say that science says that all the universe acts according to the laws of physics and so on, but nobody ever watched all the universe on every moment and seen that there are no miracles, there are no deviations from the regular laws. Okay? Yes, there are many things that science should say honestly that I don't know, not that I know there aren't. Even theories about the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang and the evolution and so on, they are can't be tested empirically. Yes, and we suppose that they were because it seems so according to our current views on the reality and our tests. But it could have been otherwise. It could have been that there are supernatural explanations to the creation of the universe and so on. Therefore, I said that science really doesn't know so much as we think it does. And so there is enough
So what do you
place.
mean? Okay, sorry. So what do you mean by contradicting? Says, as you said correctly, science is based on axioms. Okay, and so at the core of anything lies of any scientific knowledge lie these axioms. So we really know nothing to that certainty, but at a certain point, exactly as you and I would not believe in the flying spaghetti monster, okay, um, where would we put, again, why wouldn't we? Because even though we cannot disprove it scientifically, okay, it's not, we don't have anything in ourselves, in our tradition, that would suggest otherwise,
Yes.
and it's and there is not even based on these axioms, which are quite thin, the axiom of science, and we tend to all, take. I will not try to like tilt the cup and maybe wager that the water would not spill on my computer. So we use them in everyday life. So we believe in science in that sense.
All
So
right.
right. So why would where would we be able to kind of draw a line in the sand to say spaghetti monster no, but the God of Abraham yes? If it's not for our tradition.
Okay, no, I think that tradition is a reason to believe this kind of things. Yes, I want to believe the spaghetti monster because, as you said, there is no reason to believe it. Nobody ever claimed to see it. Nobody has a tradition about it, and so on. But I can believe things that many people claim they have seen, or there are stories in tradition about them, and so on. Even if I didn't see them myself, even if I don't know anybody who did see them, I still can believe that they are possible, that they could have existed in the past, or maybe today in some places. Um, what I meant when I said that I don't believe something that contradicts science, I mean something like I don't know, flat Earth, or that there is a glass dome beyond the Earth where the stars are attached to it, and so on. I won't believe this kind of thing. Yes, but everything that there is a possibility to and accept, and there is a tradition or witnesses who climb to seats, and I won't deny its possibility.
Okay. Um, Fascinating. I could have had this conversation for hours, but I want to talk about another kind of, I think it's a nice segue from our discussion concerning the flying spaghetti monster and other elements. One of
Mhm.
the more uncommon areas of interest that Rabbi Dr. Ratt has is fantasy literature. You have written last year a book titled Fantasia Hadut, which is a kind of a merging of the word fantasy with the word Judaism in Hebrew. And
Mhm.
how is Judaism better understood in light of fantasy literature? By the way, I must say, Rabbi Moshe writes short horror stories on Facebook, and he's a popular rabbi on Facebook, generally speaking. So he's not just reading it, not just taking it into consideration in his understanding of Judaism, but also writing some stories as well. So go ahead. How do the two merge?
Mhm. What fantasy and Judaism have in common is that they both open our mind to other worlds. Religion speaks about metaphysical worlds, about like angels, demons, and so on. Religion actually tells us that there is more in reality than what our eyes see. And
More
fantasy
than
does
meets
the
the eye,
same.
like the
The
like
Transformers.
yeah, Autobots and the Decepticons,
Yes,
right? More than meets the eye.
Transformers.
Yeah, we
Hmm.
are we were born in the right age. I don't know if the others can relate to these. Right.
Yes.
Right.
And
References.
fantasy.
Some do. I see. Elliot, thank you for getting the reference.
Mhm, mhm. And fantasy does the same. Fantasy also tells us about other worlds where there is magic and dragons and elves and all kind of beings. And they are both kind of escapism from the normal world, from the boring sometimes and difficult and hard existence in this reality. And we are always seeking this escape from the prison of this reality. That's why we love stories so much. It doesn't matter if we are young children or old people. When we hear a story, we are fascinated. We
Right.
want to hear about.
Being that you have a PhD in philosophy, I always tell my students that when they ask about the stories of the Bible that nobody reads philosophy. Everybody likes stories. This is why the truths of the
Mhm.
Bible are conveyed in many cases by stories rather than
Yes.
philosophical theorems. Right.
Mhm. Yes, and what I claim in my book, Fantasia Adult, is that the world of imagination is actually more real than what we think. It's not just something we made up in our mind. It's kind of reality which affects our lives in many ways, and our reality affects it back. It has a kind of mutual relationship. And when we treat the world of imagination as kind of reality, we can understand many stories in Judaism better if it is stories from the Bible or from the legend in the Talmud and so on, uh, which are coming to teach us some lesson, not just a story about uh, regular events, but a kind of a parable, איך אני אגיד את זה? זה,
It's me not.
לא, מטאפורה, no, metaphorically,
Metaphor.
yes, but not exactly a metaphor. It's more than a metaphor. It's a mythology trying to open our world to the transcendental reality. It uses stories about people and animals and gods, but it's trying to say something which is beyond words. It is a higher reality, higher transcendental reality that we all the mythologies and all the legends are trying to teach us. And
Oh,
when
that
we
is very
are,
interesting. That is very interesting, especially today, because one of the principles of the Zohar literature is kind of like the similarity between the earthly world and the divine world, and you're taking it,
mhm,
if I understand, in a similar notion to say, oh, the these stories they try to teach us about the divine world now, making this portal, so to speak, if I'm correct on my fantasy terminology between, the supernatural or the divine and the earthly one, right?
yes,
Um,
yes, the Zohar actually say that the stories in the Torah are not just stories about people who lived long ago, but there are transcendental reality which is dressed like that normal stories. Yes, and it's true about other mythologies and legends as well. They are trying to tell us something which is beyond words.
Very interesting. Again, takes me back a little bit to the way Jordan Peterson reads, even though he doesn't speak about metaphysical truths, but rather about nature of men usually because he's a psychologist, or in nature of humanity. Um,
Mhm.
do you have a favorite example for a biblical story we all know and that is understood better in light of fantasy literature?
It's not the fantasy literature that we need it, but what
The fantasy
can be
mindset.
Okay, now this is what I wanted to say. I believe that in the past, in the time of the Bible and about it, the borderline between the world of reality and the world of imagination wasn't as clear as it is today. I don't mean that those people believed in imaginational things. I say that the reality itself was more fantastical, more dreamlike. Yes, today we can differentiate between reality and the dream, but in those old ages, reality was more liquid, more not so solid, not so bounded by hard rules of science as if it is today. Yes, and therefore,
The perception of reality, is it a claim
no,
about
no,
the perception of reality, or
real,
about the physical reality?
the physical reality itself. I mean, we think that if reality today is so hard bound by science and rules and so on, then we suppose that it has always been like that. But I think it was not. I think that if all the ancient people speak about a god and witchcraft and the monsters and such similar stories, maybe it was true. Maybe reality itself was more dreamlike, more liquid, not so frozen, not so hardbound. And only along the ages, when people minds have changed and their perception have changed, then reality itself also changes, and the border between reality and imagination became harder, became more distinguished. But if we accept it, then it is not hard to accept all those stories in the Bible you mentioned, whether it is the great flood and the Noah arks and the Bilam and his donkey and so on, and the speaking serpent in Gan Eden. We say today, how could it be? It contradicts science. Yes, but if we can believe that something is possible in dream, and we believe that the ancient reality was kind of a mutual dream, then it's not hard to believe that all of those things could have actually happened.
It's a very interesting, if we're talking about expansion, so it's a very interesting expansion of a legal Jewish claim known as nishtanu hatvaim. There is
Mm-hmm.
a legal terminology in Judaism where sometimes when we have a kind of a contradiction between actual reality and what is reflected as the reality in the time where a certain rule was dictated, then sometimes the Jewish law says, oh, the nature of things was different back then, not in the exact sense that Rabbi Moshe said, but in a kind of related notion. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting concept, which takes me to the next question. We were brought up not in the same circles exactly, but in a quite similar surrounding, quite similar institutions. And I find your mode of thinking in one sense very influenced by that, by medieval Jewish philosophers who were trying to talk about faith as something that can be proven. That was a very big thing in in medieval Jewish philosophy, which again you're following the footsteps of these great philosophers of medieval times, and doing it in a very interesting way. But in a very different way than what I was brought up in. You have a very interesting approach because of these views that are related to the fantastic world, which again was not so much a part and parcel of the core of religious national Judaism, of which we both today, of which we both kind of a part of. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. How do you find your views to differ from the core of national religious views, which I would guess both of us were kind of brought up in?
Mm-hmm. I don't think my views are so different. There are many views in the national religious stream. And there are many people here who love fantasy and science fiction and the like. And I only took those two loves of mine, of Judaism and of fantasy, and combine them together, rather than saying that, okay, it's two hobbies and they are not related in any way. I say, why not? We see that both the Bible and the Talmud and Hasidut and the Kabbalah, they have many fantasy elements in them. I don't mean that they are not real. I mean that fantastical. Yes, and so why not to take it together? And when I thought about it, and I found ideas in the writing of the Rav Kook and other scholars who claimed similar things. And I also learned the philosophy in the university, which not many people do. And after reading and writing and speaking with people and so on, I reached my conclusions, and I share them with others in hope that they will find a way to their to the world too.
Hey, fascinating. Do we have a little bit of time for questions from the audience?
Okay.
Okay, so Jerry, you didn't get to ask a question yesterday, right? Or maybe you did. Go ahead.
Right, I didn't make it. I didn't make it last time. I have I would like to visit with this guy for like 3 or 4 weeks because I have so many questions for him.
Next time in Israel. Yeah.
Yes, when I'm in Israel, I'll definitely come see him. But you had agnostics and atheists. And someone told me one time the difference between an agnostic and an atheist is that an agnostic is an atheist with no guts. But I don't know
Or
if
a
that's
lazy
true or
one.
not.
Yeah. There are many versions for this.
But my question is that okay? There's agnostic. What about the Gnostics, who think they know everything, and that there's secret knowledge and there's secret languages and secret communication because they have a special knowledge versus everybody else? And this is one of the criticism of Judaism in the early Christianity, was that Judaism had this secret cult, they had this secret thing because of the language, the Hebrew language, and because of different things they did. So this knowledge is something that they used against them. Is there such a thing that Jews have a feeling of special knowledge with other nations? They have something superior than others because they have a special key and code to understand a direct relationship with God.
Okay, Judaism has the Kabbalah, which is considered the esoteric knowledge of God and metaphysical worlds. Also today, Kabbalah is not maybe not such a great secret as it was in the past, because everyone can read books about it and so on, but still rabbis and scholars who actually learn it deeply, they still claim, and I believe they are right, that there is a kind of esoteric knowledge which you can't just learn from books or from the internet. You should learn it in special ways from special teachers and so on. So yes, Judaism does have its secret knowledge, or as you call it.
I hope we'll have someone speaking about Jewish mysticism specifically next week. And I want to, Aki, yeah, go ahead. Oh, your microphone is muted, or I cannot.
I can't wait till next week, so I have to ask now. So we have, you mentioned Kabbalah, and let's say we have a book, Sefer Yetzirah, supposed to be a very ancient formulation, but I think of it as a book of stories. And
Aki, you just said.
Can you hear me?
You now we can hear you back. Maybe he shouldn't have asked about Sefer Yetzirah. You see, guys, Jewish mysticism works in mysterious ways. Yeah, you see, you got a live demonstration. You know, you can never know which angel which spaghetti monster, just, got into his computer. Right? You see, Rabbi Moshe, we didn't have to wait far to see you right.
Mhm.
Right. And yes, Georgie. Georgie?
No,
Okay.
I was saying good.
Okay, very good. So
Good
you don't
comment.
have a question. Okay, surprise?
Yes, I just have a question. My question is such a simple. I just wanted to find out what is the hope for the Jewish belief?
What is the what?
The hope.
Hope?
Hope in what sense,
Cocoon.
Aki?
Hmm?
Surprise. What is the hope in what sense? I have a hard time
Hope that
understanding the question.
I believe this. I hope for this. The result, though.
Okay, what is the eschatological hope? What is the end of time?
Yeah, no,
Hope
not
for
eschatological. Maybe if the people, like for instance, I am people from the nation. I want to become a Jewish. What is the hope for me? Is that a hope that I will receive something? The hope I will live forever? The hope of that I will have a new life beyond the horizon?
okay. And I
So,
think the question is clearer now. By the way, maybe you should not necessarily become Jewish because that's another question. So, what is the goal, the telos for any person, be that a Jewish person or not Jewish person? I would put it if I understand the question correctly, right? Surprise?
well, in the sense of that, um, when all the Jewish, what is their final hope?
Mhm.
Final hope as a people.
Yeah, as a group, as a religion, or as a believing system, something like that.
Right. I'll let
Mhm.
Rabbi Moshe take that one.
Okay, then in Judaism, our final hope is the Olam Haba, it's the world to come, which will come after the resurrection, when the dead will return to life. And then the whole world will change to something else, something we can't comprehend now. And this will be the eternal existence of bliss and the happiness and the light of God. This is what we are waiting for, and it is not just for Jews. Every man who believes in God and keeps his basic commandments, not to kill, not to steal, and so on, can also reach this world to come.
Oh, by the way, I am planning to bring a rabbi in the future who would talk specifically about the Noahide commandments, the seven famous Noahide commandments. But that's for one of our future discussions. I see Aki is with us again. Aki, let's try again.
Yeah, there's flaming angels with the swords. The entrance to the Garden of Eden stopped me from asking my question. So,
Mhm.
Right?
so
You
in
said that already.
this, see, I was offline. So in this book, Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation, supposed to be a very ancient book of kind of Kabbalistic axioms, and there's, for example, there's the three elements of Olam, Shana, Nefesh. There's like the physical space, time, and soul are the essential elements of the world. There are other things in there, etc. And that's kind of a story, right? So we return to this often when we're trying to understand biblical stories, let's say, from a Kabbalistic point of view. Do you think of that as a story? I'm saying it is, but it seems more like axioms to me.
I'm not sure I understood what you asked.
Are you asking to what level Sefer Yetzirah should be taken literally and to what it should be taken metaphorically, or what?
No, I'm asking to what extent is it a story?
In what way do you define a story?
That's why I'm asking the question. So we have stories where there's you know, there are characters, there's plot, there's time, beginning, middle, and end, and those are stories we can understand. Did this really happen or not? When did it happen? How could it happen? This is a different kind of discussion in Kabbalah of what is the construction of the world, of the universe. Do you think of that as a story or something else?
I'm not very familiar with the contents of Sefer Yetzirah, so I can't answer it specifically. But I think that there are many ways to describe the deep nature of reality, and the different streams in the Kabbalah or other esoteric views are just different ways trying to describe it in comprehensible words. So it's not a question if it is literally true or not. It's like in psychology, yes, when Freud speaks about the id and superego, it doesn't have to say that it is just like that. It is a convenient way to describe the human mind. So I think that the attempts to describe the metaphysical worlds are the same. They are using metaphors and all kind of terms, trying to make it more understandable for us. But those descriptions should not be taken quite literally.
Okay, specifically the book of Yetzirah, Sefer Yetzirah is actually within it's kind of a linguistic approach towards creation, which is fascinating because it marries indeed the words of language with that of creation and metaphysical description. I thank you very much, Rabbi Dr. Moshe Ratt. It was an absolute pleasure and a treat for all of us to have you here. And thank you very much. We all like clapping a bit for our guest. And thank you again for coming. It was absolutely fascinating to have this discussion. I don't think that I had like such philosophical discussions in the past like 20 years. Nobody talks about philosophy anymore. And you know, since I don't know when, and I enjoyed it personally, and I know that everybody else enjoyed you coming and talking with us. We are blessed to hear, you know, different views and to learn from different great people. So thank you very much for joining us. A bit of housekeeping for the rest of the week. Former Knesset member Yehuda Glick will be with us tomorrow. On Wednesday, we'll have Professor Emmanuel Tov continuing and starting to talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And on Thursday, you will have to suffer with yours truly continuing his lectures on the history of Hebrew language, specifically the characteristics of the Semitic languages. And that's the plan for this week. Thank you very much for your responses and everything. And thank you very much again for joining us today, Rabbi Dr. Ratt.
Thank you. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.